call him Maymay.
Yeah.
Now, Maymay and I just met tonight, but I find what he does fascinating. So instead of giving you like some spiel that we've written, I'm just going to read you a little bit about what we had here at Meetup, so you know a little bit about what Maymay's going to talk to you about. I find it fascinating. He's a free software developer and technology consultant who, get this, works without money. Anybody else say that?
Sometimes.
Good answer. That's right.
Instead of owning a home, Maymay lives on the road, traveling wherever, I guess he's needed and wanted, working to help secure and scale small businesses, nonprofit and community groups. He's on the road and he helps people take advantage of enterprise features through an easy-to-use and easy-to-understand free and open source software. So with that being said, Maymay?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Scott and Steve, who I know is not here, and to Microsoft for the space, of course. So you just introduced a little bit about me. I kind of want to just spend a moment to say a little bit more about myself. People call me Maymay. That's the name I prefer. This is a screenshot of my homepage at maymay.net. It's spelled like the month of May, but twice. I get DDoSed occasionally, so if my site's not up right now, don't worry about it. It'll come back in a sec. Apologies if that's happening, but go there to learn a little bit more about me, about the work that I do. And in the meantime, I want to talk just a bit about what we're going to do here. So talk a little bit about myself, won't bore you more with that. Next, we're going to quickly spin up a new WordPress multi-site instance so that we can take example to show some of the demos that I want to show you. I'll be showing you 3 WordPress plugins that I wrote that I think you might want to know about, maybe why you're here. And finally, if there's time, we can do some Q&A. Hopefully I'll have the same answers to that. So, all right, let me go ahead and spin up a new WordPress multi-site instance. And for this, I'm actually going to go out of the slides, and I'm going to go to my little demo here. Now, what I am going to do is go to this website that doesn't yet exist, just to prove that it's not actually there. wpnyc.demo. This website doesn't exist. No one can get to it. It doesn't yet exist. So we're going to go ahead and make it. Can you all see that? Is that big enough? That text is big? All right. I'm going to be using a couple tools here that I'm going to explain in just a second, but the one that I want to start with is VV, and this is going to basically automate creating an entire new WordPress multi-site install on my machine and make a site available at wpnyc.demo. So I'm going to tell VV to, hey, please create for me a domain called wpnyc.demo, and I want the name of this site, name to be wpnyc.demo. Is that right? That's right. And I want it to be a multi-site install with a subdomain scheme. You know how WordPress can do subdirectories and subdomains? I want subdomains. I want the admin username to be admin, and I want the password to be password, which I know is not a good password, but this is a demo. Yeah, right, with an @ sign. I'll talk about the software in just a sec. I just want to kick this off. The admin email address is going to be admin@wpnyc.demo. I want also to remove these defaults. You know that like sometimes when you install a new WordPress site, it installs plugins like Akismet and the Hello Dolly plugin and the like bunch of different themes that you almost never use. I want to remove all those, so I don't actually want those to be part of the final build. And I'm also going to use the debug flag here because I want to set the WP debug constant in the WP config file. This will help me show you some of the output from some of the plugins that we're going to demo, just so that we make sure that that's there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create that. And Vivi's going to ask me whether or not I want to create a site with a blueprint. I don't. Whether I want to install a specific version of WordPress, I don't. I'll just use the nightly one, the latest version rather. I'm not going to use any sample content, so it's going to be totally blank, no users, no nothing. We're not going to import any database files. We're not going to add sample content to any of this. And we're going to go ahead and start that off. So now VV is going to go ahead and build me a new server, and it's going to make that site available over on the left-hand side there. And while that's happening, we can switch back to our presentation, and we can talk a little bit about the demos that I'm going to be showing you. So, very briefly, if you don't already know about the tools there, it's setting up right on my computer here in a development environment, and it's going to be using these things. VirtualBox, which is a virtual machine hypervisor, a type 2 virtual machine hypervisor. That means that I'm going to have a totally new computer, a Linux server, on my Mac here. That is being configured using Vagrant, which is a virtual machine hypervisor automation tool. So with Vagrant commands, I can tell VirtualBox how to set up that machine, what network interfaces I want, what kind of operating system I want, what kind of ports to use, all that kind of stuff. I'm also using VVV, which is the Varying Vagrants project. This is a project originally started by the 10up company, which is a WordPress development shop. It's a Vagrant config specific for WordPress development. So we'll be using that. And last one is variable VV, which is the one that I used that you saw, and this is the command that I was using to tell VVV how I wanted to configure that WordPress setup. So all these tools are free software, open source. You can grab them on GitHub or these project pages. Variable VV is written by Brad Parbs, who's an excellent developer, and this tool is probably the easiest way to set up a WordPress site I've ever seen. I've contributed a number of features to it. It's really, really nice. Using these kinds of tools makes development a lot easier, a lot more robust, a lot more reliable because it's all automated. It takes out human error, and it's much faster, of course. So let's...
Quick question.
Yeah.
How would this, are you familiar with Local by Flywheel? Is this similar, or are there differences?
I am very only passingly familiar with Local by Flywheel, but if I understand correctly, they are basically equivalent tools, right? It's kind of, again, I'm actually not that familiar with Local by Flywheel. I've heard of it. My understanding is that it sets up a development environment for WordPress. Some of you may have heard about XAMPP, right? That old thing. That still exists. It's kind of like a package, a server in a box, like an application box. This is using, this is the same effect, but we have virtual machines to do it with instead of putting like an Apache server on your laptop, that kind of thing. All right, so while that's all building, we're here to talk about enterprise, right? So I'm going to assume you all know what WordPress is, and I'm going to assume you all know about what small businesses are and what features are, but we're here to talk about enterprise features for small businesses. So what does enterprise mean? And some of you may think you know what this is, and that's great. Obviously, I'm not here to tell you what to think that is, or maybe your employer's job. So instead, I want to make sure we're on the same page, letting you know what I mean when I say enterprise. So what I mean when I say enterprise is important capabilities for secure and private collaboration, which utilize multiple tools simultaneously, typically sold to larger corporations that have a lot of money. Right? So in other words, we're talking about anything that has to do with process or workflow automation, anything that has to do with objectives that touch multiple disciplines at once, tools, for example, that interoperate between multiple vendors, typically to avoid vendor lock-in, so that you don't have to be beholden to a Facebook or an Amazon or a Google for the rest of your business's life. Any capability perhaps that's perceived to be super advanced or maybe even unnecessary for small groups like those 0-to-1 employer shops or sole proprietorships, small businesses of that kind, particularly when they're security and privacy related, because those are the kind of things that are almost always sold as the pro features for add-ons and upgrades that are unavailable to people with not huge budgets. So in short, any kind of system or tool that supports truly resilient autonomy, something you can do yourself, not this B2B stuff, right? So with that said, I see my role as a free software developer to make it more possible for more people to independently access more of those capabilities without needing to have money and without needing to engage in any other form of abusive or coercive relationships in order to do so. So I think that's especially important to do in service to and in solidarity with the specific people whose lives are made dramatically worse by capitalist efforts to do the contrary. All right, so let's see where we are with the build of this new website and how far we've gotten on creating the server. So there we go. It says here, servers w2 the demo. Let's take a look and see if we actually have this loaded. There we go. We got a new website up. So this is a pretty standard WordPress site. It's all empty here. Nothing fancy about this at all. We can go ahead and try to log in. And we'll use our admin and password. And you can see that we have a multi-site install. So we have a network admin, we've got a users database, it's all empty, so it's just a standard brand new WordPress site that we created there. All right. Yeah.
Replacing what everyone has to do with their hosting company, create databases and...
No, this is what your hosting company uses. Right? So like you're not going to be able to go to this website from, for example, the Starbucks down the street because it's on my computer. It's physically here. However, if you were a hosting company and you, for example, didn't want to go and create a database and install WordPress every time you get a customer request, you'd probably use a tool like this. So these tools are free software, they're open source. You can do that if you wanted to. They don't tell you that, but you can.
It looks like it takes seconds as opposed to.
It does. It doesn't take very long at all. All right. So we got our website. So we spun up a new WordPress multi-site instance. Yeah. Multi-site means that you can have multiple domains, multiple websites that are running on one WordPress database. You have one database, but you have, for example, blog.wpnyc.demo and test.wpnyc.demo and maybe even like othersite.com, all running on one WordPress installation. Check out the yeah, it's all one database. So whenever you back up that database, you back up the whole thing, the whole network.
So you're managing it all in one place.
Yeah. If multi-site is new to you, definitely check out the WordPress Codex, which has a multi-site page. It describes it right there and also tells you how to set it up manually in case you want to do that. It is good to do that manually at least once or twice so you know what these tools are doing. But once you do know what these how to set it up manually, using these tools obviously makes the job a lot faster and a lot less error prone. All right, so we've created our new WordPress multi-site instance. Let's move on now. We'll learn about the sub-resource integrity manager for WordPress. So first, how many of you may already have heard about sub-resource integrity? No? Okay, that's cool. I really like the Mozilla Developers Network definition. It's pretty clear. Sub-resource integrity is a security feature that enables browsers to verify that files they fetch, for example, from a CDN, a content distribution network, are delivered without unexpected manipulation. It works by allowing you to provide a cryptographic hash that a fetched file must match. So what does that mean? For example, let's say some attacker, or you, want to run cryptocurrency mining JavaScript on hundreds of thousands of users' web browsers, right? You don't have to actually attack thousands of users' websites, thousands of websites on the internet in order to do that. You could compromise the one website that all those other websites are loading files from, for example, like a pixel, right? Like some sort of web bug. If you can change that and everyone is pulling that site from you, well, there you go. You're now loading your JavaScript code on multiple websites. So for example, if I wanted to make the users of uscourts.gov mine Monero or Bitcoin for me, then I wouldn't necessarily have to attack uscourts.gov. I could attack texthelp.com because texthelp.com is serving files for the other sites, right? uscourts and iso.org.uk. Now this isn't theoretical either. This happened just last week with these exact websites, uscourts.gov included, and it's exactly the sort of scenario that sub-resource integrity is designed to mitigate. So let's see how you can prevent this attack against your site's users for free with the sub-resource integrity manager for WordPress, right? Let's go back to our demo here, and we'll switch back to Firefox.
SSL does?
No. SSL would not protect against this because you're still getting the content and not verifying that what you're getting is what you expected to get. It just means that no one has listened to what you're getting on the way. I'll show you what I mean in just a sec. This will be a lot clearer if you see it's in action than if you just see like slides with the demonstration about it. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, obviously, is we're going to go to our network admin screen. We're going to go to plugins. We don't have any, and we need to get one because we need to get the sub-resource integrity manager called WPSRI. I think you can also search for sub-resource integrity. Regardless, here it is. We're going to go ahead and install this. And there it is. Now, when you have a multi-site install, you can activate plugins for an entire network all at once, or what we're going to do is going to go to our site itself, our site's dashboard. It's hard to do this backwards. Go to our plugins, and we're going to go ahead and activate the sub-resource integrity manager for WordPress. That's it. You're now protected. By which I mean, if you go to our tools page, you'll see a new item called sub-resource integrity manager, and you see here all the listing of resources that your site's requesting, every single one, including the ones on your own site because we set that debug flag. I wanted to make sure there was some content here. Over on the left, you see the URL column. That's the source address of the file you're loading. So these are JavaScript and CSS files, etc. And over on the right, you'll see these hashes. And this is the cryptographic hash. This is the one-way mathematical function that proves that the content that's being served to your site is the content that you expected to get when you first loaded that resource. So what do I mean by that? Let's go to the site itself. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the view source thing here. And let's make that a little bit bigger so you can see as well. And let's just go ahead and look at one of these link elements. Actually, let's look for a style sheet because, style sheet, there we go. And so this probably looks familiar to any of you who have seen CSS before, right? Link rel style sheet. Here's a href reference to the style sheet itself. But over on the right, you can see cross-origin anonymous and integrity equals SHA-256 dash and then this hash. This hash is the metadata, right, of what was expected to be in that style sheet. So if some attacker modifies it, it's not going to load in your browser if you're using if you're expecting to get this particular hash value. What do I mean by that? Let's go a little bit deeper into that. So let's close. What happened there? Let's close out of this. And I want to create now an example attack on this website to show you how this is actually enforced. So the very first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go to my command line here, and I'm going to create a new JavaScript file. This is going to be going to a CDN that I set up ahead of time here, cdn.demo. The important thing about this site is, again, it's just a WordPress site. It's just a different domain. The point being that we have two different domains, one requesting JavaScript sources from another. Right? This is exactly the same thing as you would, for example, do when you do an embed on YouTube and you say, hey, please, YouTube, please load some content on my site. I'm going to do the same thing, but it's going to be very, very simple. So we're going to echo some JavaScript, and we're going to say here, how about alert? Whoop. This is hard to do backwards. Alert, how about hello WP NYC meetup, right? And we're going to go ahead and put this into the root of my CDN demo at htdocs, and we can call that test.js, for example. And I want that actually to be output there. Whoops, where did I mess that up? Echo alert. Yep. That's fine. That's not fine. Oh, there's some other, I mistyped some stuff. I can't actually see all that. There we go. It looks like I'm not able to see what is there. Echo, alert, allow WPNYC meetup, close. Let's not do this full screen because I don't see what's over there. Oh, I have another. Yeah, so this is going to put this text, alert, hello WPNYC.meetup, into this file. There we go. So if I look at this file, let's say cat that file out, you'll see that now that file has alert hello WPNYC meetup, and if we go to our cdn.demo/test.js, we'll have that file being served in the web browser. The next thing I need to do, of course, is I need to load this JavaScript into the theme that we're using, right? So I'm going to go ahead and use Vim to edit our WPNYC demo, htdocs, WP content. Vim is a text editor, like TextEdit, but in a command line. So like Notepad or something like that. WP content, themes 2017, because that's the theme we're using, and header.php. Right, so this is going to look pretty familiar to anyone who's edited a WordPress theme before. You can see here the WP head hook function there. And we're just going to add another one, and it is going to be WP-enqueue script, and this is going to be WP-SRI demo, and we're going to load cdn.demo/test.js. All right, now our website, we've put that embed code basically into our website. So now when we load the WPNYC demo site, we should get an alert that says, hey, hello, WPNYC meetup. There we go. So we now have that alert. We're running that JavaScript code. Here's the thing. What if I then change that JavaScript code, right? Well, without sub-resource integrity, if I change that JavaScript code, it's still going to run, which means that if some attacker then changes that source code on some other server that you don't control, that you have no insight into, they're now running their code on your site. With sub-resource integrity, however, if I change that, so let's do that. Let's vim this again. This time, let's vim the CDN site, htdocs test.js, right? Let's make something much more malicious happen here. Maybe something like a cross-site scripting attack, right? with a cross-site scripting attack, if I reload this now, if I wasn't using sub-resource integrity, we're going to go over to sub-resource integrity manager to see that we have a hash for it, right? It's not going to load. Okay, why didn't it load? It didn't load because if we look at the inspector, go to our console, you can see none of the SHA-256 hashes in the integrity attribute match the content of the sub-resource. In other words, the browser says, hey, I saw this file, but it doesn't match what you told me it should contain. And because it doesn't match, I'm not going to run it. Therefore, your users also will not be subjected to that JavaScript. If I No, it just won't run. So, for example, if you had a personalized resource, Google Fonts does this, where it sends personalized content to each individual user, but it's the same URL, right? It's always google.com/font/something. That is going to break this. And so hopefully Google will fix that and will give like individual URLs to people. Until then, you have this little exclude button, which just takes out that integrity attribute in case you run into a problem where you're loading one resource for multiple users, but the content of that one resource is different for each user. In that case, the integrity attribute won't be printed, and if I reload this page, we should now have an XSS attack happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so that happens again because we did not include the integrity attribute in our test.js script element. If we again go back to sub-resource integrity manager and re-include it, then when we reload, we will not get the XSS pop-up because the integrity attribute will be printed, and we'll see in fact that the SHA-256 hash was not matching what we expected it to be. So let's return this to the original hello WP-NYC meetup, and we'll save that, and hopefully with this, because again it matches, it's not excluded, but it does match the content that we're expecting it to be, and we visit the site and we get this back. So that is sub-resource integrity manager
Does that
for
add
WordPress.
any weight to the site or any kind of...
It will increase your HTML page sizes, but hopefully you're using, HTTP2 for good compression, and it's not really adding a lot in comparison to the kind of like attack that this can have. The kind of vulnerability that this is for your users is pretty serious. So this is basically considered a really good thing. It's been widely developed and deployed. Some pro tips for using this. srihash.org is a great site to go to if you want just one of these one-offs. If you have like a JavaScript file that you want to insert yourself, but you want to include the integrity attribute, go to srihash.org, plug the URL into the form there, hit hash. It'll give you the exact code you want to use for that. Yeah. You can also further harden your site by using the CSP HTTP headers that are content security policies, which tell your visitors' browsers not to load anything that doesn't include an integrity attribute if you use the require SRI4, and then you can say either script or style or both. And finally, of course, because the free and open internet is a platform agnostic technology by design, you don't have to be using WordPress to be using this. You can, for instance, if you're using Ruby on Rails, use the Sprockets Rails gem, just use your JavaScript include tag and add a new parameter there, integrity equals true, and Sprockets Rails will take care of it. Similarly, if you're using any of the Node.js tools, pick up the SSRI package over on NPM, and again, it's ssri.fromData or .fromURL or something. Give it an algorithm that you want to use, and the toString method will give you the integrity attribute, what you want to actually print out. Okay, so that was integrity resource for WordPress. Yeah?
What happens if I want to change the plugin or the script or whatever?
Yeah.
Do I have to run something again so I can update the hashtags? Or?
The easiest thing to do is to go back to your tool.
Okay.
So let's go back to WPMIC demo. We'll go to your tool, and you find the resource you want. So let's say test.js here, and delete it. Now, the next time it loads, Sub-Resource Integrity Manager will say, oh, I don't know this. I'll go ahead and fetch it, rehash it, and that way basically you're forgetting the old hash and putting in a new one. So that's that.
Just an example of an everyday example of how this would be used in a site that we're all not familiar with.
It's already used in many sites you're familiar with, and it's used specifically to make sure that there's no unexpected manipulation from the CDN side, right? So for instance, a long time ago, not a long time ago, but like 2 years ago, there was one of these JavaScript DDoS attacks that happened by Baidu, which was one of the Chinese analytics firms. The Great Firewall of China evidently decided to change anyone who was loading Baidu Analytics JavaScript that they were sending to DDoS GitHub. As in to try to get every browser on the planet who was loading Baidu Analytics to send a bunch of requests to github.com to take them down. And it worked because at the time there was nothing like this. So that, among other reasons, is why SRI features became a W3C standard and is now deployed in all these different frameworks. So for WordPress, you can use the Sub-Resource Integrity Manager until we get this into core. It looks like it will be into core at some point, but I don't want to promise about when or how because I don't know. Oh, you just have to hit exclude on the right. Yeah, so
So when you run it, then it shows up on that list.
yeah.
Hit exclude when you see it.
Well, I mean, and yes, for Google Fonts or any resource that has the same URL but whose content is different. Right? Because if the content is different, it's not going to match the hash for all users. It will only match the hash for one user, probably you, because you're the first one who has requested it. So you want to exclude those until sites like Google and other CDN providers start making unique URLs per user. All this personalization that happens on just the content and not the URL needs to go away for this to work.
How are you able to tell which ones?
See if your site still works. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to move on to GPG and OpenPGP signing and encryption for WordPress. So first of all, how many of you are familiar already with GPG or OpenPGP or signing and encryption technologies? 1, 2, 3, 4 hands in the back. Okay, cool. Great. Any of you want to shout out what that is? No? All right. Well, basically, it's secure email is the answer to that, right? In short, GPG or OpenPGP, they're kind of interchangeable terms, mean secure email. But here we need to be pretty careful about what we're talking about when we say secured. What does secured really mean? Right? In a very brief nutshell, because I don't have that much time, when InfoSec pros talk about security, they're usually speaking about something that's known as the CIA triad. It's called a triad because it has, of course, 3 parts, and these are confidentiality for the C, integrity for the I, and availability for the A. Now, for the purposes of this presentation, we're only going to concern ourselves with the first 2 pieces of this triad. Another common word for confidentiality, you'll often hear this a lot, is privacy. Much more often used word. And similarly, very similarly to that, another word that's used for integrity is authenticity. So in the next demo, when I talk about GPG encryption, what I want to be talking about is ensuring privacy. The ability for your website to send a message that only its intended recipient can read. And when I talk about GPG signing, what I'm talking about is ensuring authenticity. The ability for the recipient of that message to verify that the message was actually sent by your server, not some other imposter, and that the message that they got was unmodified in transit. It's the actual message that you sent, right? Very much like the sub-resource integrity thing where you're hashing stuff. All right, so now let's see how you can accomplish this with the PGP encrypted emails plugin that I wrote. So we're going to go back to our demo, and ooh, there it is. And I want to go to my WordPress site, and as before, we're going to create a new plugin by going to Network Admin, Plugins, Add New, and we're going to search for WP PGP encrypted emails, or that's the full name of it, but you can also probably just search PGP encrypted emails. Anyway, we're going to hit install now. And there it goes, and we can network activate this, or we can again just go to a site, go to the demo, go to the demo site, go to our plugins, and activate. Oh, nope, I wanted this one. Plugins, and activate that. All right, that's it. Now, very first thing you'll notice is that we have one of these admin notices up at the top. It says, hold on, you're not done yet. You've got to create or generate an OpenPGP key pair for the website to sign outgoing emails with. In other words, you can't just send an email. You have to actually stamp that email with the identity of the website cryptographically. So that's what we're going to do when we hit Generate PGP Signing Key. That's it. That's all you got to do. And this will take you to the Settings screen and with a new item here under Email Encryption. And this email encryption settings will have a number of options. The important one for here is the PGP signing key pair. This is a low-trust, single-purpose key identity for the website that you need to distribute to any user who wants to make sure that when they're getting emails from you, it's coming from the right place. There's a theme function that you can add to your theme that makes this button, so you don't have to worry about the code itself, or you can go to, or tell your users to go to the profile that they have and click on Download Public Key at the very bottom under their personal email encryption settings. We're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to click Download Public Key, and it's going to give me this file. I'm just going to save that for the moment. But before we do anything with that, I want to show you what an unsigned and an unencrypted email looks like. A regular old email, nothing fancy. This is what you're doing probably right now. And to show you that, I'm going to go to WP-NYC demo, and I'm going to go to 1080 here. This is Mail Catcher. This is another one of these development tools that is installed when I did the VB build. And what this does is it kind of intercepts any outgoing email from my website and shows it to me in this interface so I can debug it. You can see that we already have an email in here. This one is the email that was sent when it was when the WordPress site was kicked off and built. Sometimes you'll see this in the one-click installers. You'll get an email saying, "Hey, your WordPress site is ready." That's what this is. So this is the source code of that email. You can see the headers up here and the body down here. And there's nothing fancy about this, nothing special, nothing cryptographic, no hashes, none of these security features. It's all just plain text. This is like sending a postcard through the post, right? Anytime you send a postcard, anyone viewing or handling that postcard can read the contents. That's what all email, all text messages, all unencrypted HTTP, not HTTPS traffic is. So we're now going to add the equivalent of a digital envelope to protect the contents of this message and a digital stamp that says, much like those Game of Thrones, wax stamps, this definitely came from Jaime Lannister or whoever. We're going to add that to our emails. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Firstly, we have this key that we downloaded. So let's go ahead and take a look at my downloads folder. And, or actually, we need this. Take a look at this here. To authenticate the emails, download the PGP public key and import it to an OpenPGP compatible client. This links to Prism Break, which is a fantastic website. If you don't know about it, check it out. prism-break.org, and it lists here all the software that you can use PGP or GPG with. So there's a vast ecosystem of this. It's available on Windows, Linux, Android phones, iOS devices. Basically any computing device that you have can do this for free already with either one of these apps if it's not already built in. Many Linuxes have this built in, for example. So I'm going to be using GPG Tools or Mac GPG for this. That is at gpgtools.org. If you're on a Mac today and you want to try this out, go grab this. Best tool for the job I've seen. All right, so we're going to go ahead and open up this email, this key. I'm going to open it with an application that was installed with the GPG Tools package that I installed earlier called GPG Keychain. And we're going to import that key, and there we go. Now we have this key. Now what this means is that we are aware of a cryptographic identity for the website wpnyc.demo. I can now authenticate any emails that are sent there. So let's go ahead and get an email from there. You could trigger an email by purchasing an order or making a new user account, or you can use the handy send me a test email button, which is what I'm going to do. And when I click this, I want you to take a look at the Mail Catcher tab up here, and I want you to look at this. This is going to go from 1 to 2. Okay? Ready? Send me a test email. There it is. Now there's 2. Now there's a test email. And now, take a look at how the email is different. We have this begin PGP signed message text on top and on the bottom. This is what's known as a clear signed message. This is saying that this is effectively the integrity attribute or that metadata for the contents of that message, just like the SRI stuff. Functions very similarly. If you were using an email client, this would automatically authenticate.
Use both.
Use both what?
Both is GPG and the SRI.
Yeah, they're separate plugins, they're separate technologies, but they use the same what are known as cryptographic primitives, which is to say they use the same mathematics under the hood.
If you use one or the other.
No, you can use both because they do different things. In fact, I would recommend you use all the plugins I'm going to demo. because they're all free and they run on any WordPress site of any size. All right, so we're going to grab this PGP signature here, this contents of this email. And again, if you were using an email client like Apple Mail or Microsoft Outlook or something, you wouldn't have to do this copying and pasting, but I'm using a debugging tool, so I am. I'm just going to go ahead and open up a text edit window, and I'm going to paste this into a new file, and we're going to say test email, and we're going to save that on my desktop, and sure, we can use the email extension. All right, and now to verify that this is in fact I don't need this anymore, the message that came from the site, I just right-click, I'm going to go Services, and Verify Signature of File. See that there? Verify Signature of File. All right, click that, and we get a verification result signed by WordPress at wpnyc.demo. This means, yes, this email came from the site that you think it did, and it was unmodified. No one changed the message between the time that the site sent it and the time that you received it. So to prove that, we can open up this test email again, text edit, and we'll open this. Whoop, come on. Why is it not dragging this over? Drag. Seriously? For real now? All right, let's do it this way. Other. And we'll use text edit, which is here. All right, so now let's change this email in some way. We'll just delete some text. We'll resave it. Let's try and verify again. Now we should get a failed message, right? This should not verify because the message was changed. This is really important for things like, for example, security announcements. Apple Inc., like the company that makes this computer, right? They do this, exactly this process for when they send emails to their security announce list, because it would be pretty bad if they sent a security announcement to say, hey, there's a new patch available, and that was actually a fraudulent email, right? Web hosting providers, DreamHost sends this with their billings emails, with their receipts. Now you can do the same with this plugin. All right, so that is a test email. Now that was Simon. Do we have time? Do you think we should do encryption? Do we have time for this? Yeah. Yes? Okay. Is there a question there?
Yes.
I can't quite hear you. Are you asking if it's possible to, if this works with an external service?
Yes, an external email service. If you don't want to use your WordPress server as
Yeah. You will have to do a little bit more work to use an external service to do that, because you'll need to send them pre-signed messages, right? So for example, a lot of these services will insert things like, hello name, or, who lives at such and such, your account number is such and this. If you sign the message before they do that, none of these verifications are going to work, because they'll be changing the message on your behalf. On the other hand, there's many free software plugins for WordPress that can function similarly to MailChimp, for instance. And this plugin is compatible with all of them that I've tested, which at this point has been hundreds. So you could do that. It might take you a little bit more time to send those emails, but at least that way you're actually doing the work on your site yourself and not farming that out to a third party that may or may not, and probably is, mining you for data. But obviously up to you. All right, what time is it? It is 8:30. So I have until 9. I got a lot of content. You sure you want to see encryption?
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all good for that? 8:45. All right, I don't have a lot of time then. Here's what I'm going to do. All right. Well, I'm going to go through this a little bit quicker. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new key here. This doesn't really matter. To do encryption, we have to do the reverse process. Rather than getting the key from the website, I have to give the website my identity. But to have an identity, I need to make one. So that's what this is. That's what the new thing is here. So we'll do that. Some email.invalid, none of this matters. Password, I'll say password, and password here. And under advanced options, what's there? Oh yeah, so I'm just going to say this is a test, do not use this key. All right, we're going to generate that key. I'm going to continue with a simple password. And again, all the GPG tools will do this, whether you're using Windows or Linux. I just happen to be using a Mac. I don't want to upload the key to the key server again because it's a test. And what we've done is created a key pair, what's known as basically a digital lock and a key that opens that digital lock. So if I hit export here, I get a file on this desktop. Let's go ahead there, and desktop, there is my file, which just like the other email, right? This can be opened because a key, an identity, a cryptographic hash, right, is just text. We can open it with text edit, and you can take a look at what a key looks like. It's just a really big number, really. So if I copy this into my, because I'm the admin here, I'm going to copy it into the settings, email encryption, and admin email here, and hit save. Now that's all I got to do. If I get another message, let's trigger that again. Send me a test email. We'll go from 2 to 3, and now this was the signed message. Now we'll have an encrypted message. So now we just have this begin PGP message block. And this is the content that is going to be stored, for example, by Google or by Microsoft Live, right? When you are actually using a Gmail account, they're reading all your email. Well, that's because it's not encrypted. If you use this and you give the sites that are letting you send encrypted messages your cryptographic identity, Google can no longer read your email because to them it looks like this. So the question is, how does it look like to you, right? Well, we'll go back here. We'll go to text edit. We'll just paste this message in again. And again, on an actual email client, this is much, much simpler. I'm just going to right-click, go to Services, and go to Decrypt Selection, a new window. And what we should see here is I'm being asked for my password, which I put for this identity, which I put before, right? Let's say password. And, oh, it opened it up over here. So let me just move this over. There we go. Right, this is a test message from WPMIC demo. It's still signed, right, because the site has a signing key, and it's decrypted because I have the matching key that to the lock that I gave the website. So that is OpenPGP signing and encryption for WordPress. Quick pro tips for making even more use of this plugin. Number one, importantly for small businesses, you should know that the WP-PGP encrypted emails plugin features zero configuration out-of-the-box support with WooCommerce. So if you have a WooCommerce store, right, as long as your WooCommerce, as long as your chosen theme supports the WooCommerce account pages, then all you have to do is install this, and your customers will get an out-of-the-way form that looks exactly like this, that they can use to opt in to signed emails or even encrypted emails if they go ahead through the process of making their own identity and uploading the key and giving it to your store. This is an example of what a signed email might look like in Apple Mail, right? Instead of the mail catcher interface, it would just look like this. It would say security signed. And that's how they would know, yes, this actually came from your store. So this is really important for secured email receipts, for private transfers of communications between like tech support, anything that you basically don't want other people reading. This is all from a blog post at a small business out of New York City called Flora Posidonia, floraposidonia.xyz. Check that out at some point if you want to see this in practice in the wild. For developers, WP-PGP encrypted emails features a general purpose API to cryptographic operations using familiar WordPress plugin hooks. So what I mean by that is that the plugin uses the same hooks that it makes available to other plugins for itself. And that means that with as few as about 4 lines of PHP, you actually, as a developer, can build PGP or SMIME encryption into your own plugins and themes. So you can see here we're getting the user object. We're applying the OpenPGP user key filter to that user object to get the key itself. And then we're using OpenPGP encrypt with the message that we create and the public key to get an encrypted message. You can now, using PHP, send this variable over the internet or in an email anywhere you want, and it's that PGP message block instead of the plain text content. Okay, so that was GPG and OpenPGP signing and encryption for WordPress. I got 10 minutes, so I'm going to hold questions. And at this point, we're going to go on to a centralized authentication service using OpenLDAP for WordPress. Now, as before, centralized authentication services with LDAP. Anyone use this already? Sound familiar to anybody? No? All right, we'll start with LDAP. So that stands for the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. It is an open, vendor-neutral, industry-standard application protocol for accessing and maintaining distributed information services. So what that means, for our purposes at the moment, is basically that an LDAP database, which is called a Directory Information Tree, or a DIT, can store user account login details like usernames and passwords and email addresses and phone numbers and this kind of thing in an application-independent way, so that any app that can speak LDAP can actually use the LDAP store as its user database. Fun fact, LDAP was written by Tim House, who's the CTO and founder of a company called Opsware that I worked at for a while, and that's now HP Software Automation Suite, HPSA, for those of you actually working in enterprise. Let's take a step back for a moment, though, and talk about what this might look like, a website's system might look like without LDAP at all. You have a website, it's running WordPress, we'll call it yoursite.com, and one of your users, we'll call them Alice, logs into the site, right? So to successfully log into that site, WordPress first checks its WP users table for an entry that matches Alice's account credentials. If those credentials exist and they match the ones that are submitted by the user, then Alice is successfully logged in, everything is okay, you get the dashboard or you get the home page, it all looks fine, right? In this setup, the user's account information is stored by WordPress for WordPress and is only available to WordPress, so we call it application-specific data. Now let's imagine that you want to add another app to your network. Maybe you have an intranet, right, and you want to add Nextcloud or something. This is kind of like a Google Docs replacement. You could, and most organizations that I've seen typically do, just tell Alice that they now have two user accounts. They have a WordPress account, right, and a completely separate account for Nextcloud. And in my experience, this causes a lot of problems. Among other issues, it means that users now must manage two user accounts, two passwords, two user profiles independently. Most users will probably choose the same password and the same profile information on both systems, but once they change their password on one system, the other system isn't informed, and that leads to confusion, not to mention a lot of help desk tickets. So this is a classic problem that LDAP is designed to solve. Now with an LDAP server, you can store account details in a way where you can provide a centralized authentication service, also called a CAS, for any LDAP-capable application that you choose to add to your network. So now, regardless of which app server Alice logs into, right, their account credentials are always the same. And when they change their password on the one side, say WordPress, right, they can immediately use their new password to log into Nextcloud because that authentication check is happening in one central place, which is that LDAP server at the top. So let's see how you can configure this using, whoops, that was too fast, using WordPress. We're going to go back to our WordPress demo, and I'm going to try and run through this a little bit quickly. I apologize, because I'm running a little short on time. But what I have here is another install of Nextcloud. This is a brand new Nextcloud instance. It's running on the same machine as the other one. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new admin account. If Nextcloud is familiar to any of you, this will look pretty familiar because it's basically just as I did before, a completely blank Nextcloud instance without anything preloaded, right? So no users, no files, no nothing. So this is Nextcloud. For those of you who haven't seen it, it looks a lot like Google Docs. You can upload files and you can download files. You can open up text files. You can share photos, that kind of thing. You can take a look at the users database here. There's just one user, the admin. There's nothing else, and that is just blank Nextcloud. Now we also need, of course, is the WP nyc.demo. Oh yeah, hello. We need the plugin for WP LDAP, which is this one here. There are a lot of LDAP plugins, but mine is the one called just WP LDAP by me here. It's pretty small, pretty new and small because it's not really that user known, but I'm going to go ahead and install it. And what this is going to let me do is when I go to network activate it, I will have a new option under my network settings called LDAP settings. Unfortunately, I need to be using HTTPS to manage it because this is kind of sensitive. So we're going to go ahead and do that like this. Password. There we go, LDAP settings. Now I'm not going to show this because I don't have time, but I also have a LDAP server running on port 389 on that same machine. Installing an LDAP server, if you're a server admin, is usually as simple as sudo apt install /d or the standalone LDAP daemon. For the time being, I'm going to have to skip that. I set it up so that it has a bind DN, which is basically like the user account that you're using to admin the site. This is basically the same as the MySQL user. You know, like you have a MySQL database and your WordPress website needs to know what the login credentials of the database are. Same exact procedure. In this case, it's not a MySQL database, it's an LDAP database. So the syntax is a little bit different. But in general, it looks something like this, WPNYC, and DC stands for domain component. So this is the dots, right? Instead of .com or .demo, I'm using DC equals. And CN is common name. Let's go ahead and actually double check that that is correct, because I don't want to not be. Okay, so I logged in over there, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste this from my notes to make double sure that I have this right. Here we are. So I'm using an LDAP search tool on a command line, asking for the host, which is localhost in this case, using external authentication, meaning the OS itself, to ask for the config common name, and I want the OLC or online configuration root DN. The root DN is basically like super user. You know how like WordPress has super admin? This is super admin for LDAP. And sure enough, it's CN admin, WPNYC, and demo. So that's right. And then the base is just the end here, the same, WPNYC demo. You can change this if you want, but it is effectively the same here. So for example, if you wanted to do a different directory tree, you could do, for example, OU people, right? And this is like basically choosing the table. Where in the database do you actually want to store what we're about to put? In our case, because this is a simple demo, we'll just put it at the root over there. And that's it. We save that change. Now your WordPress can talk to LDAP. What does that mean? It means if we create a new user here, let's say we're going to make a new user on our network, and we'll call it test LDAP. And it's going to be test LDAP at wpnyc.demo. We're going to add that user. Hopefully, if I got that right, no, I don't want notifications. If we configure now Nextcloud to add LDAP integration too, now Nextcloud ships with LDAP integration, so we don't even have to write a plugin for this. We're going to go to the apps page on Nextcloud, enable the LDAP user and group backend plugin. We'll now go to the admin screen for LDAP. We'll go to LDAP and AP integration. And we're going to give it the same details that we gave WordPress. So 127001. Nextcloud has some nice JavaScript that can detect the port. The user DN was CN admin domain component WPNYC domain component demo, I believe. And the password was password. Let's see if that where did that, maybe can we see, yup, and detect base DN, there we go, and test base DN really looks good. So we're going to hit continue, and now you can see we've got 3 entries available. These are inet.org persons. A user account in LDAP is an inet.org person, an internet organization person. We can verify this. We found 1 user. We're going to continue, and here you can say, how do you want them to log in? Username only, or username and email? You can go with either. This is basically like, log in with your email, log in with your username, just like WordPress. And if we do test LDAP here, yeah, user found and settings verified. Continue, and we're good. So now, when we go to the users screen, you'll see another one. And there you go. Now we can log in with this user. So for instance, let's say you can't log in with this user because I don't know their password. But if we edit their password and set it, let's set it to something simple like password. Yeah, confirm that password. We'll update that. We'll log out of Nextcloud as the admin, and we'll log back in as the test LDAP user. And there we go. We didn't have to make a user account on Nextcloud because we made one on WordPress. And now, no matter how many apps you add to your intranet or your site, you now have one authentication store for all of your users. This is really useful for example, employees inside of a company. Taking out one, deleting them from the LDAP store will remove their access to all your apps. It's also portable, so you can transfer it from one app to another, as long as the apps that you're using can speak LDAP. And with WP-LDAP, WordPress can. So that was WP-LDAP with WordPress. Pro tips on this: it's built for multi-network, not just multi-site installs. So if you're not familiar with WordPress multi-site, read about that. Once you've read about that, check out the article again on the WordPress Codex on multi-network. This is a network of WordPress networks. And WP-LDAP works with that too. You can set different servers, LDAP servers for different networks. So you can do things like network segmentation or perhaps round-robin load balancing. It's kind of up to you. It's also already aware of the WP PGP encrypted emails plugin. So if you use both of those and your users will supply an SMIME certificate, that will get sent over to LDAP, and that will allow you to do transparent email encryption for things that are configured for that, such as like iPhones in a BYOD or bring your own device environment. Microsoft Outlook supports this out of the box as well. All of these features are standard protocols that are for free that you can install on WordPress sites of any size that you never have to pay for if you don't want to. You could, I wouldn't. All of this, of course, is RFC 2798 compliant, so any consumer that speaks LDAP, Apple Contacts, iOS, Mozilla Thunderbird address book, you can get a people directory and actually like have email autocomplete lookups for all of your employees or mailing list subscribers or anything like that. All right, that was centralized authentication service for LDAP. I don't know if we have time for Q&A.
We could do a 5-minute Q&A.
Very short Q&A. I realized that was a lot of information very quickly as well. Yeah.
I run an NGO, a nonprofit organization, and we have an account for Google Apps, which they gave us for free. Could you use LDAP connect to Google?
Oh yeah, Google uses LDAP behind the scenes. So this is what they're using, right? Like, there's not a difference in the technology between Google, Facebook, or this. It's just a matter of whether or not they put the like branding and the sheen on it to make sure that you feel like you're using their thing as opposed to the standard thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
and can you use also plugin with Google?
Oh yeah, I do all the time. Yeah.
Plugins fix the problem that when WordPress sends out emails and it looks like spam, like in Gmail, there's like a big question
That's-
mark,
yeah.
and so you have to go to SendGrid or some of these other guys to clean up the email.
Yeah.
Does that fix that issue?
Sadly, no. So the question was if these plugins fix emails looking like spam. And unfortunately, they don't. Yeah, from WordPress. They don't because of a number of reasons, which we can talk about maybe later if you want. But the shorter answer is no. The longer answer is they might even make you look a little bit more suspicious, only because they would rather you use their thing. All right, so any last question about that? All right. In case it wasn't clear, all these plugins are freely available on the WordPress plugin repository today. Here are their permalinks. I'm going to put up these slides somewhere so you can take a look at them on your time, and hopefully we've got a recording at some point as well. Again, my name is Maymay. My homepage is maymay.net. It might be down. If it is, try again in a little bit. Again, I get DDoS a lot. At maymay.net, the very top link is download my digital business card. Click it to download and import my vCard to your contacts app. And that's all I got. Thank you so much for your time and attention, everyone.